Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Joseph Clough, and this is episode 633. And today we're talking about a myth. We're talking about a myth that we kind of assume to be true, that we think is going to hold us back. And now that myth really is that it's either there's a few, and I'm going to just add a couple into this. Number one, we think it takes a long time to change. Right? So whether it be months, years, even decades, how long have we had our problem for? Sometimes, I'd say probably for most of us, it would be decades almost. I know I had mine for a couple of decades when I first experienced my issue. So we usually think that it's a very, very hard, long process. And also that it should be a struggle. And even more than that, which I think is one of the main things I want to get into, is that it's got to be painful. You see, if you feel like the anxiety, the fear, the worry, the doubt, the imposter syndrome is a hard thing to solve, that it's going to be a struggle and that it's going to be painful. The reason why we think that way is because it is a painful issue. There's no getting away that part, right? We know feeling anxiety in the body, the dread or the stress, the fear, the worry, the niggling self-doubt, that internal dialogue just saying, who are we to do this? The fear of failure, the fear of success, the fear of not being enough, the fear of investing in ourselves, the fear of fill in the blank. All those things, it just really, really drains us, right? So the issue in itself, the issue is painful. Let's get that clear. We know, if it's not painful, it's not an issue, right? So there's nothing to be solved if you're feeling nice, good, and great. But if you feel like it is very painful to have the issue, it would make us presuppose that it must be equally painful, long, and hard, and a struggle to let go of that issue. We equate them as the same. That is a myth. Now, on top of that, which reinforces it, is number one, that we are told that it takes a long time. Because everyone experiences it in the exact same way. So when then someone has anxiety and you're talking about your anxiety, they're going to be telling you, it takes forever to let go of this anxiety. I struggled, I did this and I did that and I've still got it. So therefore we go, oh my goodness, that person took a long time. So that must mean we have a complex equivalence there. We take something and we make that meaning upon ourselves. We take their generalization and we start to run that story because we feel the anxiety, and if someone else or many people are telling us that it takes a long time to let go of our issue, we assume that to be true, but it is also a myth. Now, there are also therapies out there, and I'm not here to knock other therapies. I think any therapy, any modality of change, if it gets results, if it's right for the person, it's a good one. I don't think there's just one right way. I have my one right way because I know it inside out and I get that result, but I'm not going to be silly and overconfident and obnoxious to think that other therapies or modalities don't work. In fact, I've utilized different modalities in my time. But sometimes there are some vehicles of change, the modalities, which are set up to be a long time. Like I said, I'm not knocking those, because if that's just the vehicle of change, if that's the distance, we think that that's the requirements of how long it takes for me to change. So it then becomes really, really hard for us, because then if someone says it just takes a matter of weeks to change, we have that disbelief. And that disbelief gets in our way, which does what? It reinforces the anxiety. It makes us think, oh, it's going to be painful. Because if it's going to be painful in the long run, right? If it's going to be a painful, long experience of talking about our feelings, just speaking about them and not really making big, profound changes, where it's just by ourselves, like we're just speaking about it, we're talking about it, we're experiencing it every day. If someone says that it just takes a short period of time, you will immediately have a sense of disbelief because you've not managed to do that yourself, which therefore makes it feel more painful, or you think it must be painful to change in a short period of time, because if it's painful in the long term, of course, doing something like a crash course in an intensive course in letting go of your issue, we presume and project that it must be also painful, but even more painful than changing in the long term. So we have these myths that we run within our mind. Now, there are other little aspects as to why we do not change in the long term, or why it feels like a constant battle. Because usually we are trying to change at a conscious level, where the issue remains at an unconscious level. Now, if you do that, we're looking in the wrong place. And my quickest and easy analogy is, look, if you could click your fingers and let go of the issue, just like that, you would. No hesitation. Unless you really love your issue, you'll click your fingers and you'll let go of the issue. So that must mean if you cannot do it, it must mean the unconscious mind is running those behaviors, the internal critic, the imposter syndrome, the fear, the worry and doubt. You don't have control over them consciously. Yet if we just try to change consciously, we're actually creating more resistance because we're looking in the wrong place. Now, even if you use hypnosis, and I'll get to that soon, I'll get to why it should be quicker. But I want you to remember it is a conscious transformation. But if we just try to manage our thoughts, if we just try to manage our feelings, if we just try to keep them at bay, or if we try to escape them, if we try to just do words of affirmation, nothing wrong with words of affirmation once again, but they can be an issue. If the unconscious mind is running the issue and you're saying, I'm good, I'm great, I'm worthy, I'm deserving, I'm enough. If your unconscious mind is saying, no, I'm not though, I'm not good enough, what about this, what about that? You actually create more of a stress because you're pulling in this direction, but your unconscious mind is giving you more resistance. And therefore it makes us feel worse. So that's why sometimes affirmations aren't the greatest thing. They're good and great in the perfect mind because then you're having the right foundation. But sometimes if we keep on just repeating the affirmation but we don't unconsciously believe it, we're going into that fake it till you make it. And fake it till you make it is not a good philosophy of transformation. Because do you know what fake it till you make it really does for most of the people? Some people can get through it, but most people with a fake it till you make it, you create imposter syndrome within itself. Because you feel like an imposter because you are faking something that you do not believe. So when you say those affirmations, or when you pretend to that everything is great and that life is going to get better, and we just like do that wishful thinking, our unconscious mind saying, no, it's not ready. It hasn't got what it's needed. And then if we go deeper into it, the other problem is, which creates the myth that it must take a long time, it must be hard work, it must be painful to let go of the issue, is because usually we're working on the wrong thing. Not only are we doing it consciously, but even if you are doing the unconscious transformations, even if you are doing hypnosis, even if you're maybe seeing another hypnotherapist and so on, it takes a very, very important aspect of learning and education to get the transition from where you are to where you want to be in a seamless way. And I'm going to say it here right now, if you are not having fun in your transformation, then I don't personally believe we're doing it right. I want transformation to be fun. It shouldn't be painful. It shouldn't be scary. I mean, it's scary to start, but once you get into it, it should be the most uplifting, the most enlightening, the most profound, epiphany creating transformation that you could ever imagine, that you go on a lifelong journey of exploring what is possible within you and all around you. That to me is transformation. And that's how I like to work with my program, my clients. Like, I want to have fun. I don't think we learn very well. I know I did at school, when it's all strict and it's kind of stressful and it's mean and it's harsh and all those things. The best way to learn is having fun when you're enjoying the process. So we must enjoy the process of your transformation, even if there is darkness in our past, even if we've gone through certain events. Just because we've gone through the stresses and the strains of life and the significant emotional events that we've gone through and would have added and allowed us to be where we are, maybe, it doesn't mean it has to be equally stressful to make that change. We've got to make the perception and the difference in our thoughts by actually going, changing my life should be fun. This should be something that I enjoy. So when you're doing a process, when you're doing a transformation, when you're working with someone, if you're not having fun, I'd be asking questions. That's just me. I want to be able to have fun. I want it to be an uplifting, whether it be spiritual, and I don't necessarily mean spiritual, but like your own personal spiritual experience. Getting in touch with your own spirit, your own consciousness, your own unconscious. So it's gotta be fun. But what makes it not fun is thinking that it's not going to be fun, because then you bring in resistance. You're bringing into the situation all those hesitations and those reservations and those stresses and those strains and all the significant past emotional events. And that's not right. That's not good. We need to be able to park them at the door if we're going to do a transformation. Yes, we might feel like we cannot change. We might experience that, look, I don't believe it will work for me. You can have disbelief, but just because you have disbelief in something, it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it anyway. Because you're gonna do it because it's right. You're gonna do it because it's on your heart. And that's just realizing that your unconscious mind is saying that maybe I don't believe it. But if there's that part of you consciously which goes, I am ready to change. I am ready to embrace the greatness of who I am about to become by releasing who I've been in the past. That I can go all in on that enjoyment of transformation, because that's when the epiphanies appear. And I say this with hypnosis. Hypnosis is about learning to go into trance, but I also say you relax as you learn and learn as you relax. So we should be doing the same philosophy when it comes to our own transformation. Relax into it, enjoy it, be excited by it. And the other thing which gets in the way to make the myth that it's painful and it's hard and it's a struggle is because most of the time you are working on the wrong thing. Let me explain. Say you have anxiety. Now, not for everyone, but let's just say in this unique example. So for some people, it may be just anxiety. But for many other people, the anxiety is a byproduct of something else. Like worry is a byproduct, maybe a doubt, even, in my opinion, the imposter syndrome. Because we focus on what we feel the most, right? So if there's an issue within you and you feel anxiety, and because you feel anxiety, you go, well, anxiety must be the issue that I'm experiencing because that's what I'm feeling the most. Depression must be the issue because I feel depressed the most. That fear or phobia I have must be the issue because I feel that fear and phobia most of the time. But just because you feel something most of the time, it doesn't mean it's the issue. Just because maybe I have a migraine every time I go to work doesn't mean that the migraine is the issue, but maybe that's a signal to pay attention to. Maybe it's something within our work. Maybe it's about ourself, which creates the pain in our head, to get outside of that situation. So you may feel the migraine the most, but the migraine is just a signal telling you something. So really what you feel the most is the signal for you to look for what the root cause of that issue is. Does that make sense? The most of the time we work on symptoms. You see, let's just say you were going to work, if you were feeling unwell one day and you go to a doctor, and as you go to that doctor, the doctor goes, look, tell me what you're experiencing. And you go, well, doctor, I have this headache, I have this sore throat, I have this stomach ache, I have these aches and these pains and all of these things, these ailments. Every time I eat, I don't feel very good. So in that moment, you tell the doctor everything that you experience the most, because you experience the most in that moment, the aches, the pains, the stomach, the headache, the sore throat, and all those symptoms, right? Now, if that doctor turns around to you and goes, look, here's our plan of action. I'm going to give you one pill for the headache, another pill for the stomach, another pill for the ache, another one for the pain, another one for the sore throat, another one for the fever, another one for fill in the blank, and another one for the other ailment that you told me as well. Now, before you know it, that doctor's just said to you that you've got to take 7 pills for the rest of your life to manage those symptoms, because that's what you feel the most. 7 pills per day, every single day. Maybe 1 or 2 of those are twice a day. Now, to me, and hopefully you, that would probably make you think that doesn't feel right. Like when you go to a doctor with those symptoms and they just give you a ton of pills to take for each one of those symptoms, you might think that doctor's not that good. You see, if you go to a good and great doctor and you say all the same ailments again, all the symptoms you're feeling, the headache, the sore throat, the stomachache, the aches, the pains, the fever, the chills, all of those things, that doctor should probably go, look, based on all the symptoms that you've just told me, I think that this one thing is creating all the symptoms. You see, the doctor will take in the whole big picture, all the ailments of the body, all the things that you felt the most. But the doctor wouldn't treat just what you felt the most, but allow those as symptoms which are presenting a greater problem. Maybe it's like a bacterial infection which creates the ailments and the symptoms. So instead, maybe they give you that antibiotic, just a course of 5 days, 3 times per day. And not only does that bacterial infection disappear, but guess what? All the other ailments disappear too. Now, take the first scenario of having the 7 pills for the 7 symptoms, the 7 things that you're going through. Every single day, 1 for the headache, 1 for the sore throat, 1 for the aches, 1 for the pain. That is a painful thing, because you feel the headache, you take the pill. You feel the ache, then you gotta take the pill. And therefore, you're just going this back and forth each and every day, managing those symptoms. That to me sounds like what? It sounds like the myth. That it takes a long time to change, that it's hard to change, that it's painful to change. Whereas the second scenario, the good and the great doctor, taking 1 pill 3 times per day for just a course of, say, 5 days, that's the opposite. That is changing in a short period of time. That is changing in an easier period of time. It is changing in a more simplistic period of time, because you're doing focusing on the one thing which changes the everything. But the problem is, we always tend to focus on what we feel the most, and therefore we focus on all of it. We get overwhelmed, we get stressed, we get worried, we're dealing with this, deal with the inner critic, deal with the anxiety, deal with the depression, deal with the panic, deal with the stress and the dread, deal with the insomnia because I just can't sleep because of all this stuff happening in my body, deal with not feeling that good about ourselves and not working out because I just feel so stressed and tired all the time based on all these symptoms I have. Therefore, it feels like it's never going to work. It feels like it's going to take forever. It feels like it's going to be a problem. It feels like all of these things take a long time, painful time, and impossible time. But that's because we're focusing on the wrong things. So we've got to A, meet the issue where it lives, the unconscious, in my opinion. 2, not to focus on symptoms and find the root cause. 3, to not pay attention just because your issue is hard and painful and stressful. Therefore, if that's the case, it doesn't mean that the transformation has to equal that pain, right? We don't have to equal that. Our big pain must mean that it's going to be painful to let it go. We don't have to equate the same level of emotional energy with that one, because it doesn't have to be. And on top of that, when we listen and we speak to other people and they're expressing their pains, their stresses, they're saying, look, I've had anxiety, I've had hear about that imposter syndrome? I've had that. Do you know how long I've had that for? 20 years. Never got rid of it. Now suddenly as we hear people like that, we're like, oh my goodness, therefore it's going to take a long time for me to let it go. But what if we put our attention on the person who let go of imposter syndrome in a few weeks, despite having had it for decades? What if we focus on the person who released all their anxiety from their system within a few weeks or a month or 2 months? Hey, let's go crazy, 3 months, despite having it for 3 decades. Wouldn't it be nicer to look for that, to model that, and especially when they had fun doing so, when they start to remember how great and powerful they are? To me, that is what we have to do. And this all sounds totally counterintuitive. But putting it into the example of the doctors, like the bad doctor and just having a pill for every symptom, now it makes sense. Because that's not very sensible. You want to go to a doctor who will diagnose the root of the issue and therefore solve all the symptoms. Now it makes sense. So the parallel here is now, well, if I treat my mind, my body, my issues, my symptoms that are presenting to me and within me, and I feel them the most, but just because I feel them the most and I experience them the most, it doesn't mean that I have to work on each and every one of them, or that it has to be painful. No. We got to operate like the good doctor and find the one thing, the root cause, the unconscious root cause, which is creating all the symptoms in our life. That's what I believe. That's my philosophy. You may disagree with me, and that is okay. I don't mind. It's great to have different opinions. But I do know, based on my experiences, that we can make changes. And do you know what? Here's another interesting thing. Just to break outside that model that transformation takes a long time. Do you know what? Transformation can actually take 1 moment. That's right, it can. I'm not saying it will. It can take 1 moment. And I'll tell you why. Usually, not all the time, just like it might not take just 1 moment for all of us, but usually the issues that we experience, say a phobia, for example, that phobia is usually created over a decade of time. No, it doesn't. At all, right? Think about it. Phobias don't take a slow little build up. Phobias happen in a moment. They start within that one impact event where we have that irrational fear and we make an irrational, unconscious, limiting decision. It doesn't take decades to create that phobia. It takes a moment when you have that significant event. So if it takes sometimes a moment to create an issue, surely it can, there's a potentiality, there's a possibility here of taking 1 moment to maybe let it go. Think about it. Sounds counterintuitive, but the exact same thing that we've been talking very counterintuitively here. But if we expect, just based on we've had our issue for so long, therefore it must take the equal or more of the time to therefore let it go, it doesn't make sense, because it created the issue sometimes in a matter of moments. And even if it was over a few days, even if it was over a few weeks, Like some may be a build up, but the initial part of it is usually in a moment. So why do we think there must be forever to get rid of our issue in the same amount of time? These are all things that are counterintuitive, but when you really step back and get out your own way and think about this on a logical level, on a way that where you have these comparables and these comparisons, like the doctor example or the phobia example, we can start to then see the world differently and go, do you know what, Joseph? Do you know what I'm going to do? Rather think that it's going to take a long time. I might have these fears and reservations about it, even though I think it could be painful. I am going to also recognize and realize that there are some things that Joseph has said is true today, which is one, that yes, issues can appear in a moment. They can be created in a moment. So why maybe we can't let go of the issue in a moment as well? There might be some foundations to be had, might be a build-up of transformations, little bits and bobs here and there, but the real epiphany can happen just one moment. Also, we can recognize that, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be just focusing on all my symptoms and equating all that stress and therefore battling them all. Maybe I should focus on, or at least look for the one thing that creates the everything. That's how I work. Maybe we should look for the people. In fact, I know when it comes to like my profession, there's something called like a fast phobia cure. And I've done it plenty of times, and I've let go of phobias with people. I actually did it on TV in England, on ITV, for those who are listening in England. And it was on The Tonight Show. So really, really big, at one time it was a very, very big show, and I had to let go of these phobias in a few minutes. Anyway, I digress. So we let go of all the phobias, and I used this one process. But you know how the process was actually created? It wasn't focusing on all the people who've had phobias or have phobias. They focused on the people who had phobias and let them go and understood how they see the phobia now. Because they're looking for the success and not the problem. They're looking for people who've overcome the issue, and therefore when they get into that mindset and ask the questions, well, how do you see that old fear now? They've got a success strategy because they've noticed someone who's gone through something, overcame it. That's who you should be modeling. That's where we create the process. So I ask you, don't talking to the people, or of course talk to as many people as you wish, right? That's freedom of will. But don't talk to the people expecting a solution when they're talking about the issue continuously. In other words, if they're always talking about how hard anxiety is, how hard imposter syndrome is, it's going to condition us as well. And we want to be, still speak to the people, but I want you to be looking for the person who's actually overcome imposter syndrome. I want you to be looking for the person who's overcome the lack of confidence, if that's the issue. I want you to be, if you've got a fear of phobia, look at people who've overcame phobias. Look for the specialists who can actually find out what that route is and give you the successful strategy. So I want you to break free of the myth that it's hard and painful, and it's a long time, and it's a struggle to let go of our issue, because it's absolutely not true. It only becomes a truth once we buy into it, because that becomes our expectation and therefore our evaluation of what is possible. But I urge you, I welcome you, hopefully, to look for the counterintuitive, to look at the opposites, to look at where things have changed quickly, to look at people who've experienced and let go of things. Because if they've done it, why can you not? I mean, why not? And remember, transformation should be fun. That's what it should be. It should be a joyful experience. Like some examples, or one example. When I do my events, I like to do demonstrations, of course. Like, I love being a part of the process. And we can let go of issues in a very, very, like I said, decades gone in, say, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is, right? 10, 15, 20 minutes. We can let go of huge things in that short amount of time once you find the root cause. Disclaimer there, find the root cause and then use the right process to let it go. Don't work on symptoms. And every one of them, although they can feel emotion, it's this kind of remembering, there's this big release, there's this huge awakening, which is, yeah, can be tears and there can be emotion, but these are happy tears, these are release tears, this is release of trapped emotion. So it should be just like that. Look for the fun, look for the enjoyment of your transformation. For when you do, you usually find it. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and of course, if you want to go ahead and get my help with this, but only, here's a disclaimer, you've got to be committed, you've got to be driven, you've got to be professional, you've got to be invested. This is a system which works, and it's for you in every single way if you fulfill the criteria, because it is an application-based program. It's not like just anyone gets in, but we'll get clear of what you want to let go of, figure out exactly what you want to achieve, get clear on what's unconsciously stopping you, and then get the next steps. If we can solve it within 8 weeks, we'll let you know. If not, we'll hopefully point you elsewhere. But we get our results, and we have a most loving community, which I love, by the way. And this is being broadcast live, by the way, and I see some great comments coming in from people in the program. But go to josephclough.info/talk to be able to apply. But once again, you got to be invested, you got to be ready, you got to be decisive. If you're not resourceful, you're not dedicated, and you're not decisive, but this is your time to change, please do not book, because we're just not going to be a good fit. And I think that's a good thing to get out of the way in the beginning, right? Most people go, yeah, I want to work with everyone, I want to sell everything. I don't want that. I want to work with the person who wants to match me and goes, look, Joseph, I'm ready to make this change. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Open-minded, I'm going to ask questions, I want to be guided, all those things, because that's who I love. That's who I really, really want in my world. And I just love being with people in that situation. So with that, my friends, I look forward to speaking to you on a future episode of the podcast, and I'll speak to you all soon. Many thanks and goodbye.